The blizzard roared down from the Montana mountains with a fury that made even the hardened ranchers of Clifton Hill seek shelter. But Samuel Pierce had seen worse during his 8 years working cattle in these unforgiving lands. He stood on his porch watching the snow swallow his fence posts when he spotted something moving through the white curtain, something that looked like a wagon struggling against the wind. His heart lurched as he realized whoever was out there would not survive the night if they did not find shelter soon. Samuel grabbed his heavy coat and forced his way into the storm, each step a battle against wind that threatened to knock him flat. The wagon had stopped about 50 yards from his property, the horses already covered in snow and trembling. He reached the side and pulled himself up to peer inside, expecting perhaps a traveling salesman or a foolish prospector. What he found instead made him forget the cold entirely. A woman sat huddled with 4 children wrapped in every blanket and coat they owned, her eyes wide with fear and exhaustion. She could not have been much older than 25, with dark hair plastered to her face and lips turning blue. The children ranged from what looked like 10 years down to a baby she clutched against her chest. "Please," she said, her voice barely audible over the wind. "My children, please help my children." Samuel did not waste time with questions. "Can you walk?" She nodded, though he could see her strength was nearly spent. He helped her down first, then reached for the oldest child, a girl who looked at him with eyes too old for her face. One by one he got them out, the wind threatening to tear them away. The horses he could not save, but he cut them loose from the wagon and hoped their instincts would guide them to his barn. The journey back to his house felt like miles instead of yards. The woman stumbled twice, and the second time Samuel simply lifted her and the baby both, shouting at the older children to hold onto his coat. They made it inside just as his muscles gave out, all of them collapsing in a heap near the door. For several minutes, Samuel just focused on breathing and getting the door barred against the wind. Then he turned to his unexpected guests and took stock. The woman was unconscious but breathing. The baby was crying, which he took as a good sign. The 3 other children stared at him with varying expressions of terror and hope. "All right," he said, keeping his voice calm. "We need to get everyone warm. You, the oldest girl, what is your name?" "Emma," she whispered. "Emma Miller. This is my mama, Zelda. And my brothers Thomas and William, and baby Sarah." Miller. Samuel knew that name. There had been a family named Miller who tried to homestead about 20 miles north of here. He had heard the father died of fever last month, but he had not known about a wife and children. "Emma, I need you to be brave and help me. Can you do that?" She nodded, squaring her thin shoulders. "Good girl. Help your brothers out of these wet clothes while I tend to your mama and the baby." Samuel had lived alone since coming to Montana in 1881, and his small ranch house reflected that solitude. 2 rooms, a main living area with a kitchen and fireplace, and a bedroom barely big enough for his bed. He had built it himself with help from a few neighbors, never imagining he would need space for 6 people. He carried Zelda to his bed while Emma got her brothers situated near the fire. The baby had stopped crying, which worried him more than the screaming. He peeled back the layers of blankets and found the infant girl barely moving, her lips a frightening shade of blue. Samuel had helped birth calves and foals, had even assisted when his neighbor's wife delivered twins during a summer storm 3 years back. He knew enough to recognize the signs of severe cold exposure. He stripped the baby down and held her against his bare chest under his own shirt, using his body heat to warm her. She was so small, maybe 6 months old, her skin like ice against his. Zelda stirred, her eyes opening slowly. For a moment she looked confused, then panicked, trying to sit up. "Your baby is here," Samuel said quickly. I am warming her. She is alive. All your children are alive. Zelda's eyes found his face, really looking at him for the first time. Even exhausted and half frozen, she was beautiful in a way that made his chest tight. Dark eyes that held an ocean of sorrow, a face that must have been quick to smile before life beat it down. "Where are we?" she asked. "My ranch, about 3 miles south of Clifton Hill proper. I am Samuel Pierce." "Your daughter Emma told me your names." "Samuel," she repeated as if testing the word. "You saved us." "The storm is not over yet. We need to keep you all warm and get some food in you. When did you last eat?" She had to think about it, which told him everything. "Yesterday morning, some bread." The children ate most of it. Of course they did. He had seen how thin she was even under all those clothes. "I will make something. Can you feed the baby?" Color rose in her pale cheeks. "I have been trying, but I do not think I have much milk anymore." That was a problem. Samuel had no milk in the house, but he did have some beef broth he had made a few days ago. It would have to do. He handed the baby back to her mother after making sure Zelda was bundled under every blanket he owned. In the main room, Emma had done an impressive job. Her brothers, maybe 8 and 5 years old respectively, sat wrapped in his spare clothes which hung on them like tents. They watched him with huge eyes as he moved around his kitchen, starting a pot of beans and bacon, warming the broth, slicing bread he had traded for in town the week before. "Are you a cowboy?" the younger boy, William, asked suddenly. "I am a rancher. I have about 40 head of cattle right now, down from 100 last spring." "What happened to the other 60? Thomas asked. "Sold them. That is how I make my living. Raise cattle, sell them, use the money to get through the winter and buy more cattle." Emma was looking around the small house with the calculating eye of someone who understood logistics. "You live here alone?" "I do." "It is not very big." Samuel almost laughed. "No, it is not. But it has a roof and walls and a fire, which is more than you had an hour ago." She had the grace to look embarrassed. "I did not mean to be rude, sir. Thank you for taking us in." "You are welcome. And you were not rude, just honest. We are going to have to figure out sleeping arrangements, but for tonight everyone can pile together in the bedroom. I will take the floor out here by the fire." They ate in near silence, the children too hungry and tired for conversation. Samuel watched Zelda try to nurse the baby with the broth he had warmed, dribbling it into her mouth drop by drop. The infant took it slowly, seeming to revive a bit with the warmth and food. After dinner, Emma helped him settle everyone in the bedroom. It was crowded but warm, all 5 of them packed onto his bed like puppies in a basket. Samuel closed the door partway to give them privacy, but left it open enough that the heat from the fireplace could reach them. He made himself a bedroll on the floor and lay staring at the ceiling, listening to the storm rage outside and the soft sounds of breathing from his bedroom. In the span of 2 hours, his entire life had changed. He had a house full of people who needed him, a widow and 4 children who would have died if he had not spotted their wagon. The weight of that responsibility should have terrified him. Instead, he felt something he had not experienced in years: purpose, direction. A reason to wake up beyond just surviving another day. Sleep claimed him slowly, and when he woke, it was to the smell of coffee and the sound of someone moving in his kitchen. Gray light filtered through the windows, and the storm had reduced to a steady snowfall. He sat up to find Zelda standing at his stove, wrapped in one of his blankets like a cloak, making breakfast from his meager supplies. "You should be resting," he said. She turned, and he saw that some color had returned to her face. "You saved our lives. The least I can do is make you breakfast. Besides, the children are still sleeping, and I am not used to lying in bed while the sun is up." Samuel stood and moved closer, keeping his distance but near enough to talk without waking the children. "How is the baby?" "Better, I think. She took some more broth when she woke in the night." "I found it warming on the edge of the fireplace." He nodded. He had woken every few hours to check on it, though he had not realized she knew. "Good, and you?" Sore, tired, grateful. She paused in her work, looking down at her hands. "Ashamed." "Why would you be ashamed?" "I should have known better than to travel with a storm coming." But we had been turned away from 3 houses already, and the man at the store in town said there might be a church further south that could take us in. "I thought we could make it." "You were turned away." Samuel felt anger kindle in his chest. "Women and children in need, and people turned you away. They have their own families to feed, their own problems. I am just another widow with too many mouths to feed." Her voice was flat, like she was reciting a fact rather than expressing pain. "My husband died 6 weeks ago. We had been trying to make the homestead work, but without him, I could not manage. I thought maybe we could go back east, to my sister in Ohio, but we did not have enough money for train fare. I sold everything we had just to buy that wagon and horse team." "I am sorry about your husband." She nodded once, sharp, like she was cutting off that line of conversation. "He was not a bad man, just unlucky. The fever took him fast." Samuel poured himself coffee and sat at his small table watching her work. She moved efficiently despite her exhaustion, scrambling eggs and frying the bacon he had started to cook the night before. He tried not to notice how the blanket slipped off one shoulder, or how her hair fell in dark waves down her back. "You can stay here," he said suddenly, "until the storm passes and you are all recovered. Then we can figure out what comes next." Zelda turned to look at him fully, those dark eyes searching his face for something. "Why are you being kind to us? You do not know us. We are strangers who bring nothing but trouble. You are human beings who needed help. That is reason enough." "Is it?" She shook her head. "You would be surprised how many people do not see it that way." Before he could respond, Emma appeared in the doorway, rubbing sleep from her eyes. "Mama, is everything all right?" "Everything is fine, sweetheart. I am making breakfast. Go wash your face and help your brothers get ready." The morning passed in a flurry of activity. The children needed clothes, which Samuel did not have, so he made do with cutting down some of his own shirts and using rope as belts. It was makeshift at best, but it would work until he could get to town. If he could get to town. The snow had piled at least 3 feet high, and it was still coming down. By midday, the house had warmed considerably from all the bodies, and the fire Samuel kept roaring. The children had lost some of their fear and were starting to explore, though they stayed close to their mother. Thomas found Samuel's collection of books on the single shelf near the fireplace and asked if he could look at them. "Can you read?" Samuel asked. "Yes, sir. Mama taught us all to read." Samuel glanced at Zelda, impressed. Literacy was not common out here, especially among homesteaders too busy surviving to think about education. "Your mother is a good teacher, then. Go ahead." The afternoon was strange and domestic in a way Samuel had never experienced. Zelda insisted on helping with chores, so she took over his laundry, which had been piling up, heating water on the stove and scrubbing clothes in the basin he used for washing. Emma helped watch the younger children, playing quiet games with them near the fire. Samuel worked on reinforcing the shutters against the wind and making sure they had enough firewood to last several more days if needed. Every so often he would catch himself watching Zelda, the way her hands moved through the water, the soft humming under her breath, the gentle corrections she gave the children when they got too rowdy. He wondered what her life had been like before, if she had been happy, if her husband had appreciated what he had. That night they shared dinner around the small table, the children crammed together on one side while Samuel and Zelda took the ends. It felt like family, which was dangerous. Samuel had learned not to want things he could not have, and a ready-made family definitely fell into that category. "Tell us about your ranch, Mr. Pierce," Emma said. "Do you have horses?" "I have 2 horses, both out in the barn right now keeping warm. And I have those 40 cattle I mentioned, though they are hunkered down in the south pasture where there is more shelter. When the weather clears, I will need to ride out and check on them." "Can we see the horses tomorrow?" William asked, his eyes bright with interest. "If the storm stops, yes. But you have to understand, ranch work is hard and dangerous. You cannot just run around out there without knowing what you are doing." "I can help," Emma said. "I helped Papa with our animals all the time." Samuel looked at Zelda, who smiled sadly. "She did. Emma has always been very responsible." "Well then, maybe when things settle down you can help me with morning chores. But only if your mama says it is all right." The conversation drifted to other topics, and Samuel found himself enjoying the sound of voices in his house. He had grown used to silence, to the lonely echo of his own thoughts. This was better, even with the chaos and the inconvenience. When the children were settled in bed again, and Zelda had finished nursing Sarah with broth and what little milk she had, she came back out to the main room. Samuel was sitting by the fire staring into the flames. "May I join you?" she asked. "Of course." She sat in the chair across from him, pulling her borrowed blanket tighter. For a while neither of them spoke, just listened to the wind and the crackling fire. "I need to tell you the truth," she said finally. "About my situation." Samuel waited, giving her time. "My husband, Daniel, he was not a good businessman. He had dreams, big plans, but no practical sense. We came west because he was convinced we could make our fortune, but he had no idea how hard it would actually be. When he died, he left us with nothing. Worse than nothing. Debts. The wagon and horses I bought, I stole money from the man Daniel owed. He will come looking for it eventually." This was more serious than Samuel had anticipated. "How much?" $40. That was a significant sum, but not insurmountable. "What is his name?" "Marcus Webb. He runs a supply store in Lewistown. He is not a forgiving man." Samuel nodded slowly, thinking, "I can pay that debt." "No," Zelda said immediately, sharply. "Absolutely not. I will not let you throw away your money on our mistakes. It would not be throwing away anything. It would be helping someone who needs help." "And what would you want in return?" Her voice had turned cold, defensive. "I am not so naive as to think charity comes without strings." Samuel felt like he had been slapped. "I want nothing in return except maybe some company through the winter, someone to talk to. But if you would rather leave as soon as the storm breaks, that is your choice. I will not hold you here." Shame crossed her face. "I am sorry, that was unfair. You have been nothing but kind. I am just tired of being at the mercy of men's kindness, tired of waiting for the bill to come due." "I understand. But not all men are the same. Some of us actually mean it when we offer help." She studied him for a long moment. "You are different, aren't you? The other ranchers I met, they looked at me like I was something to be used or something to be discarded. You look at me like I am a person. You are a person who is doing her best in impossible circumstances." Tears welled in her eyes but did not fall. "I do not know how to accept this, any of this. You do not have to decide tonight, just rest, recover. Let your children be warm and fed, everything else can wait." She nodded, wiping at her eyes. "Thank you, Samuel, truly." The sound of his name from her lips did something to his heart, made it beat faster in a way he had almost forgotten it could. He was in trouble here, he realized. Serious trouble. Because he was already starting to care about this woman and her children, and caring led to wanting, and wanting led to heartbreak. But as he watched her stand and move back toward the bedroom, her silhouette framed by the firelight, Samuel decided that maybe heartbreak was worth the risk if it meant feeling alive again. The storm lasted 3 more days. In that time, Samuel's small house became a world unto itself. The children slowly lost their fear and began acting like children again, playing games, laughing at silly jokes, begging Samuel to tell them stories about his ranch and the cattle drives he had been on when he was younger. Emma proved herself invaluable, helping her mother with the younger children and even trying to help Samuel with meals. She was 11, she told him, and she had been taking care of her brothers since she was 8. That fact made Samuel angry at a dead man who had put too much responsibility on a child's shoulders. Thomas was quieter, more watchful. He reminded Samuel of himself at that age, always studying, always thinking. He asked questions about everything. How did the cattle know to come when called? How did you train a horse? How deep did you have to dig a well? Samuel answered every question patiently, recognizing a curious mind that needed feeding. William was pure energy, bouncing from one thing to another, unable to sit still for long. He reminded Samuel of his own younger brother, long dead from a logging accident back in Pennsylvania. That grief was old now, worn smooth by years, but it still ached sometimes. And baby Sarah, she was thriving with regular feedings of warmed broth mixed with a bit of mashed potato. Zelda's milk had started coming back, helped by the food and rest. Samuel tried not to think about the fact that he found even that beautiful, the sight of mother and child in his rocking chair by the fire. He and Zelda fell into an easy rhythm. She took over the cooking and cleaning, refusing to be idle even when he insisted she should rest. He handled the outdoor work, fighting through the snow to reach the barn and tend to the horses, chopping more firewood, checking the food stores. On the third night, after the children were asleep, they sat together by the fire again. This had become their routine, these quiet evening conversations when the house finally settled. "Tell me about yourself," Zelda said. "You know all about my tragic circumstances, but I know nothing about you except that you are far too kind for your own good." Samuel smiled. "There is not much to tell. I came from Pennsylvania 8 years ago, worked cattle drives for 3 years to save money, then bought this land and started building my own herd. It has been a slow process, but I am getting there. No family. Parents died when I was young. Brother died 5 years before I came west. There was a girl back in Pennsylvania, but she married someone else when I said I was leaving." He shrugged like it did not matter, though at the time it had felt like the end of the world. "No great tragedy, just life. Do you get lonely out here by yourself?" The question was simple, but the answer was complicated. "Sometimes, but I got used to my own company, or I thought I did anyway. This week has made me realize how much I was just existing instead of living." Zelda looked down at her hands folded in her lap. "I know that feeling. The last 2 years of my marriage, I was just surviving, trying to keep the children fed and safe while Daniel chased his dreams. When he died, I felt guilty, because along with the grief there was relief. What kind of person does that make me? A human one. Marriage is not always love and romance. Sometimes it is just 2 people trying to get through the day." Was that experience talking? Observation. I have seen enough of my neighbors' marriages to know that the fairy tales leave out a lot of the hard parts. She smiled, small and sad. "You are very wise for someone who lives alone in the Montana wilderness, or very good at pretending." Their eyes met across the fire, and Samuel felt something shift between them. It was too soon, he knew. She was grieving, exhausted, vulnerable. He had no right to feel what he was feeling. But the heart did not care about rights or timing or propriety. "I should check on Sarah," Zelda said, standing abruptly like she had felt it too and needed to escape. "She will be waking soon for her feeding." Samuel watched her go and forced himself to stay in his chair instead of following. He needed to keep his distance, to protect both of them from a complication neither was ready for. On the fourth day the sun came out. The snow had stopped sometime during the night, leaving a world transformed into white drifts and glittering ice. Samuel woke early and made his way to the barn, checking on the horses and assessing the damage. Everything looked good, all things considered. The cattle would need checking, but that could wait until he had cleared a path. When he returned to the house, Emma was already up, helping her mother with breakfast. She lit up when she saw him. "Mr. Pierce, can we go see the horses now, please?" Samuel looked at Zelda, who nodded. "All right, but you need to bundle up. It is still very cold out there." Getting 4 children dressed in makeshift winter gear took longer than Samuel would have thought possible. Finally, they were ready, looking like small fabric-wrapped bundles with eyes. He led them out to the barn, showing them where to step to avoid the deeper drifts. The horses nickered when they entered, and William gasped with delight. "They are so big." "This is Smoke," Samuel said, indicating the gray gelding, "and this is Copper." The chestnut mare nuzzled his hand, looking for treats. "They are good animals. Smoke is my riding horse, and Copper I use for heavier work." He let the children pet the horses under supervision, watching to make sure no one got kicked or bitten. Emma was fearless, running her hands over Smoke's neck and talking to him in a soft voice. Thomas was more cautious but curious, asking questions about their care and feeding. William just wanted to hug Copper's leg, which made Samuel nervous until he saw how patient the mare was being. From the barn doorway, Zelda watched with Sarah bundled in her arms. "They have not been this happy in months," she said when Samuel stepped over to join her. "Thank you for giving them this. They are good children. You have done well with them." "I have tried. Sometimes I feel like I am failing them every single day." "You kept them alive through circumstances that would have broken stronger people. That is not failing." She turned to look at him, something uncertain in her eyes. "Samuel, what happens when the weather clears enough for us to travel?" "You said we could stay until then, but that time is coming soon." It was the question he had been avoiding thinking about. The practical answer was that she should continue on to Ohio, to her sister who might help. The answer his heart wanted was different entirely. "You could stay," he said carefully. "Through the winter at least. It would be safer than trying to travel with the children in this weather. You could help around the house, I could pay off that debt to Webb, and in the spring we could reassess. Stay here, all of us." "Samuel, we would be underfoot constantly. You would grow tired of us within a week." "I do not think I would. You do not know what you are saying. 4 children, Samuel, 4 loud, messy, demanding children. I am aware of how many there are. I am also aware that you have no money, no prospects, and no safe way to travel east in the dead of winter. I am offering you a solution that benefits both of us. You get shelter and safety. I get help around the ranch and company through the long months." Zelda shook her head, but he could see her weakening. People would talk. A widow living with an unmarried man. Let them talk. This is Montana, not Boston. People mind their own business out here. There is also the matter of space. Your house barely fits 1 person comfortably. "I have been thinking about that. I could add on a room, maybe 2. I have been meaning to expand anyway, just never had a reason before." "You are serious about this?" It was not a question. Completely serious. "I know it is unconventional, but nothing about this situation is conventional. Stay, Zelda, at least until spring. Give yourself and your children a chance to rest and recover." She was quiet for a long moment, looking at her children playing with the horses. Sarah made a small sound and Zelda adjusted her hold, rocking slightly. "If we stay," she said finally, "I will need to contribute more than just housework. I can sew, I can cook. I know how to preserve food and manage a household. Maybe I could take in sewing from the town or sell baked goods or something. I will not be a charity case, Samuel. I need to feel like I am earning our keep. All right, we can figure something out, but you have to understand that you being here is not charity. You are helping me as much as I am helping you. She smiled then, real and warm, and Samuel felt his heart turn over in his chest. You are a remarkable man, Samuel Pierce. I am not sure what I did to deserve your kindness, but I am grateful for it. Before he could respond, William came running over, talking a mile a minute about copper, and could they please ride the horses, and when could he learn to ride, and did Samuel think he would make a good cowboy someday? Samuel let himself be pulled back into the barn, but his mind stayed on Zelda and the way she had said his name, like it meant something more than just a word. The next few weeks fell into a routine that felt simultaneously natural and terrifying. Samuel started work on an addition to the house, framing out 2 new rooms that would give the children their own space and allow Zelda to have the bedroom. He worked on it during the afternoons when the sun was warmest, with Thomas and Emma helping when they could. Zelda took over the household completely, and Samuel had to admit his life improved dramatically. He came in from the cold to hot meals and a warm house. His clothes were clean and mended. The children's laughter filled the empty spaces he had not realized were so vast. He rode out to check his cattle and found he had lost only 2 to the storm, which was better than he had feared. The rest were surviving on the hay he had stored and whatever winter grass they could dig up. Emma begged to go with him on his next check, and after getting Zelda's permission, he lifted her onto Smoke and let her ride with him. She was a natural in the saddle, sitting straight and unafraid. They rode in comfortable silence for a while before she spoke. "Mr. Pierce, are you going to marry my mama?" Samuel nearly fell off the horse. "What makes you ask that, the way you look at her? And the way she looks at you when she thinks no one is watching. It is the same way Papa used to look at her before everything got hard." Samuel did not know how to answer that. "Your mama and I are friends, that is all. But you want to be more, don't you?" "Emma, this is not an appropriate conversation. I am 11 years old and I have helped deliver a baby and watched my papa die and nearly frozen to death in a blizzard. I think I can handle appropriate conversations." She had him there. "All right, yes, I care about your mother, but it is complicated. She is still grieving your father and she is staying here out of necessity, not choice. It would not be right for me to pursue anything while she is in such a vulnerable position." Emma thought about this as they rode. "I do not think Mama is as vulnerable as you think. She is the strongest person I know, and I do not think she is grieving Papa the way you think either. She is sad he is gone, but more because of what his death means for us than because she misses him. Emma, you should not speak ill of your father." "I am not. I loved Papa, but he was not a good husband to Mama. He made promises he could not keep and left her to deal with the consequences. I heard them fighting at night sometimes. Mama deserves better than that." The wisdom in her words made Samuel's chest ache. "Your mother deserves the world, and your father, he was doing his best even if it was not enough. Sometimes people try their hardest and still fail. That does not make them bad people. No, but it does not make them good partners either. Mama needs someone reliable, someone who keeps their promises and takes care of the people they love, someone like you." Samuel did not know what to say to that, so he pointed out a small group of cattle ahead and turned the conversation to safer topics. But Emma's words stayed with him, echoing in his mind as they rode back to the house. That night, after the children were in bed, Samuel found himself once again by the fire with Zelda. She was mending one of his shirts, her fingers quick and practiced with the needle. Emma said she enjoyed riding out with you today, Zelda said. Thank you for taking her. She is a good kid. Smart. She has an old soul. Too old. I wish she could just be a child, but circumstances have not allowed it. Samuel watched the firelight play across her face, highlighting the curve of her cheek, the fullness of her lips. He wanted to reach out and touch her, to tuck the strand of hair behind her ear that had fallen loose from her bun. Instead, he gripped his coffee cup tighter. Zelda, I need to ask you something, and I want you to be honest with me. She looked up, wariness in her eyes. All right. Are you happy here? I do not mean comfortable or safe, I mean actually happy. The question seemed to surprise her. She set down her mending, thinking. Yes, she said finally. I am, more than I have been in a long time. Why do you ask? Because I need to know if I am forcing you to stay here, if the circumstances are trapping you into a situation you do not want. Samuel, you have given me a choice at every turn. You keep asking what I want, what I need. Do you know how rare that is? Most men would have made demands by now, would have expected something in return for their generosity. I told you, I do not want anything except your company. And I am starting to believe that, but I also think you are lying to yourself about what you want. Samuel's heart started beating faster. What do you mean? Zelda stood and moved closer, sitting in the chair next to his instead of across. I mean that I see the way you look at me. I see how careful you are not to touch me, not to say anything that might be inappropriate. You are holding yourself back, and I want to know why. Because it is too soon. Because you are here out of necessity, and I will not take advantage of that. Because I am afraid. The last admission slipped out before he could stop it. Zelda reached out and took his hand, her fingers warm against his. What are you afraid of? That I will care too much and you will leave anyway. That I am reading too much into kindness and companionship. That I am a fool who is falling for a woman who could never feel the same way about a rough rancher with a small house and too many cattle. Zelda laughed, soft and a little breathless. You think I could never care for you? Samuel, I have been fighting against caring for you since the day the storm cleared and you insisted we stay. You are kind and patient and good with my children. You treat me like an equal instead of a burden. How could I not care about you? Caring is different from loving. Yes, it is. And I am not ready to say I love you, because I need to know that what I feel is real and not just gratitude or relief or desperation. But I could see myself falling in love with you, if you would let me. If you would stop treating me like I might shatter at any moment and just be honest about what you want. Samuel turned his hand in hers, lacing their fingers together. The touch sent warmth through his entire body. I want you to stay, not just through the winter, but beyond. I want to wake up and hear your voice. I want to teach your children to ride and help Emma with her reading and listen to William's endless questions. I want to watch Sarah grow up. And I want you, Zelda. I want to know everything about you. I want to make you laugh and comfort you when you cry and be the person you turn to when things get hard. Tears were sliding down her cheeks now, but she was smiling. That is a lot of wants. Too many. No, just right. She leaned forward and kissed him, soft and tentative and perfect. Samuel cupped her face with his free hand, keeping the kiss gentle even though he wanted to pull her closer. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against hers. We should take this slow, he said. We should, she agreed. For the children's sake, if nothing else. But I am going to court you properly. Flowers if I can find any in this snow, conversations, time together. Everything you should have had the first time around. I would like that very much. They sat together in comfortable silence, hands still linked, watching the fire burn down to embers. Samuel thought about the blizzard that had brought them together, about how close he had come to not seeing that wagon in the storm. Fate, luck, providence, whatever you wanted to call it. He was just grateful. The winter continued its slow march toward spring. Samuel finished the addition to the house, with help from two of his neighbors who rode out to see what all the fuss was about regarding the widow and children staying at the Pierce Ranch. If they had opinions about the arrangement, they kept them to themselves after meeting Zelda and the children. Samuel's courtship of Zelda was unlike anything either of them had experienced. He would pick wildflowers from the places where the sun melted the snow first, leaving them on the table for her to find. She would make his favorite foods, learning his preferences through careful observation. They would sit together every evening after the children went to bed, talking about everything and nothing. He learned that she had grown up in Ohio, the daughter of a shopkeeper who died when she was 16. Her mother had remarried quickly, and Zelda had married Daniel at 18 to escape a difficult home situation. She had loved him at first, or thought she did, but the reality of marriage had been different from the dream. She learned that Samuel had left Pennsylvania because he could not stand the memory of his brother's death, the way the logging company had refused to take responsibility. He had headed west looking for a fresh start and found it in Montana's harsh beauty. He had been lonely but had told himself he preferred it that way. They were careful around the children, nothing more than friendly in front of them. But Emma knew, of course she did. She started calling him Uncle Samuel, and her brothers followed suit. The title made him absurdly happy. Marcus Webb showed up in early March, looking for his money. Samuel met him at the door, not letting him inside. "I hear you have Zelda Miller and her children here," Webb said. He was a large man, running to fat, with mean eyes and a mouth that curved down naturally. "She owes me money." "She does not owe you anything. You have been paid in full." Samuel held out an envelope with $40 inside, more money than he wanted to part with but worth it to protect Zelda. "This clears her debt." Webb took the money, counted it, and tucked it away. "So it is like that, is it? You have set yourself up nice and comfortable with a ready-made family. You have your money. Leave. People are talking in town, Pierce, saying you are living in sin with a widow woman, saying those children are not being raised proper. Maybe someone should check on that." Samuel stepped out onto the porch, putting himself between Webb and the house. "Is that a threat?" "Just passing along what I hear. You want people to mind their own business. Maybe you should marry the woman. Make it all legal and proper." Webb left then, riding away on his horse. Samuel stood on the porch for a long time, anger and fear warring in his chest. He had not thought about what the town might say, had not cared. But if someone made trouble, if they tried to take the children away because of impropriety, he would never forgive himself. When he went back inside, Zelda was standing in the doorway to the bedroom, her face pale. She had heard everything. "I will leave," she said immediately. "I will not let you suffer because of me. You are not going anywhere." "Samuel, if people are talking, if they might try to take my children, I cannot risk staying here." "Then marry me." The words hung in the air between them. Zelda stared at him, eyes wide with shock. "That is not a proposal," Samuel said quickly. "That came out wrong. What I mean is, I want to marry you, Zelda. I have been thinking about it for weeks. I love you. I love your children. I want all of you to stay here permanently as my family. Not because of what people might say, but because I cannot imagine my life without you anymore." Tears filled her eyes again. "It has only been 2 months, I know, and if you need more time, I will wait, but the feeling will not change. I am certain of this. You could do so much better than a widow with 4 children and nothing to her name. There is no better, there is only you." Zelda crossed the room and took his hands. "I love you too. I think I started falling for you the moment you carried me into this house and wrapped me in blankets instead of asking questions. You have shown me what kindness looks like, what partnership should be. I want to marry you, Samuel Pierce. I want to build a life with you." He kissed her then, not soft or tentative but deep and claiming. She kissed him back with equal fervor, her hands coming up to thread through his hair. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Samuel rested his forehead against hers. "How soon can we get married? There is a circuit preacher who comes through Clifton Hill once a month. He should be here next week." "Too long," she laughed. "We have waited this long. We can wait another week." They sat down together and told the children that evening. Emma grinned like she had known all along. Thomas nodded seriously like he approved of the match. William whooped and asked if this meant he could call Samuel Papa now. Sarah, oblivious in Zelda's arms, just smiled her baby smile. "So this means we get to stay here forever?" William asked. "Forever," Samuel confirmed. "This is your home now." "And you will be our papa?" Thomas asked, quieter, more uncertain. "If you want me to be. I know I am not your father and I will not try to replace him, but I will love you and protect you and do my best to be a good parent to you." Thomas thought about this, his face serious. Then he nodded. "I think Papa would be glad Mama found someone kind. He was not always good to her, but he wanted her to be happy. I think you make her happy." The simple acceptance broke something open in Samuel's chest. He pulled Thomas into a hug. Then Emma and William joined in, and finally Zelda with Sarah, all of them tangled together in the middle of the small house. The week passed in a blur of preparation. Zelda made herself a new dress from fabric Samuel rode into town to buy, dark blue cotton that brought out her eyes. Emma helped her mother with the sewing, talking excitedly about the wedding. Samuel cleaned up the house as best he could and borrowed a suit from his neighbor, who happened to be roughly the same size. The circuit preacher arrived on a Tuesday, an old man named Reverend Carson who had been riding through Montana for 30 years. He agreed to perform the ceremony at Samuel's ranch, since bringing all the children into town seemed like unnecessary trouble. They married on Wednesday afternoon with Samuel's two closest neighbors as witnesses, and the children standing up beside them. The ceremony was simple, just a few words and the exchange of vows. Samuel had never been much for religion, but standing there with Zelda's hand in his, promising to love and honor her, felt sacred in a way that had nothing to do with the preacher's words. When Reverend Carson pronounced them husband and wife, Samuel kissed Zelda and felt like his life had finally, truly begun. The children cheered, and the neighbors congratulated them, and they shared a meal together that Zelda and Emma had prepared. After everyone left and the children were in bed in their new room, Samuel and Zelda finally had their wedding night. They had been so careful for months, never alone together beyond those evening conversations, never more than chaste kisses. Now, in the privacy of their bedroom, they came together with a passion that surprised them both. Samuel had worried he might be too rough, too desperate, but Zelda met him with equal need. They made love slowly, learning each other's bodies, finding what brought pleasure. Afterward, lying tangled together in the darkness, Samuel felt a contentment he had never known existed. "I love you," he whispered against her hair. "I love you too," she said back. "Thank you for saving us. You saved me too. I did not know how lonely I was until you filled all the empty spaces." They talked late into the night, making plans for the future. Samuel wanted to expand the herd, maybe hire some help so he did not have to do everything himself. Zelda wanted to start a garden in the spring, growing vegetables to supplement their meals. They talked about the children's education, about teaching Thomas and Emma to ride properly, about all the little moments that would make up their shared life. The winter finally broke in April, and spring came to Montana in a rush of green and wildflowers. Samuel taught the boys to ride on Copper, who proved patient with their mistakes. Emma learned to help with the cattle, proving herself as capable as any ranch hand Samuel had ever worked with. Zelda planted her garden and started taking in sewing from neighbors, building a small business that made her feel like she was contributing. Sarah took her first steps in May, toddling across the kitchen floor into Samuel's arms. He caught her and lifted her high, making her laugh. Zelda watched from the doorway, her hand resting on her stomach where another baby was just starting to show. They had not planned for another child so soon, but when Zelda told him in late April that she was pregnant, Samuel had been thrilled. A child that was his from the beginning, a baby that he would watch grow from the very start. He was careful not to show too much excitement around the other children, not wanting them to think this baby would be more important. But inside he felt like he might burst from happiness. Summer came hot and busy. The cattle were doing well, and Samuel was able to sell a dozen head for good prices. With the money, he bought supplies for the coming winter and materials to make more improvements on the house. They were not rich by any means, but they were comfortable in a way neither Samuel nor Zelda had ever been before. The children thrived. Thomas asked if he could have his own horse, and Samuel took him to a neighboring ranch where they picked out a gentle mare the boy could learn on. Emma took to ranching like she was born to it, often riding out with Samuel to check the herd. William remained pure energy, getting into trouble and out of it with equal speed. And Sarah grew from a baby into a toddler with a sunny disposition and her mother's dark eyes. In August, Zelda's sister sent a letter from Ohio. She had heard about the marriage and wanted to know if Zelda was all right, if she was being treated well. Zelda wrote back immediately, telling her sister about their life, about Samuel and the ranch and how happy she was. It was the truth, simple and profound. They celebrated their first anniversary in September with a family picnic by the stream that ran through Samuel's property. The children ran and played while Samuel and Zelda sat together on a blanket, her head on his shoulder and his hand on her rounded belly. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked. "Taking us in that night?" "Never, not once. You are the best thing that ever happened to me." Even with all the chaos, the noise, the children constantly needing things, especially because of all that, I used to think peace meant quiet and solitude. Now I know it means being surrounded by people you love, even when they are loud and messy and demanding. Zelda shifted to look up at him. "You are happy, happier than I ever thought I could be. Are you? So happy it scares me sometimes, like it might all disappear if I blink too long." "It is real, and it is not going anywhere. We built this together, you and me. No one can take it away." Their baby was born on a cold night in November, another blizzard howling outside just like the one that had brought Zelda to his door. Samuel held her hand through the labor, with Emma there to help like she had helped with Sarah's birth 2 years before. The midwife from town had come out ahead of the storm, settling in to wait. When the baby finally arrived, crying lustily, the midwife announced that they had a son. Samuel cut the cord with shaking hands, overwhelmed by the reality of this tiny person he had helped create. The baby was red and wrinkled and absolutely perfect. They named him Daniel, after Zelda's first husband, because Samuel believed in honoring the past even as they built their future. Thomas and William were thrilled to have a brother, and Emma and Sarah loved having another baby to fuss over. The house that had felt too small just a year ago now felt exactly right, filled to bursting with love and life. Winter settled in hard that year, but the Pierce family was ready. They had food stored, firewood stacked, and most importantly, they had each other. Samuel would sit by the fire in the evenings with baby Daniel sleeping on his chest while Zelda sewed and the other children played quiet games. It was everything he had never known he wanted. In the spring, When Daniel was 4 months old, Samuel decided to expand the ranch further. He hired a young man from town to help with the work, and with the extra hands they were able to increase the herd significantly. Money was still tight, but they were making it work. Emma turned 13 that summer and started to show the first signs of becoming a young woman. Samuel found it bittersweet, watching her grow up so fast. Thomas was 10 now, serious and capable, already talking about one day having his own ranch. William was 7 and still wild, but starting to channel that energy into useful work. Sarah was 2 and talking up a storm, following Emma everywhere. And Daniel was growing fat and happy, his smile lighting up the house. Zelda bloomed with the stability and security. The thinness and exhaustion that had marked her when they first met were long gone, replaced by curves and color and a joy that radiated from her. Samuel fell in love with her all over again every single day. They made love often, stealing moments during the day when the children were occupied, coming together at night with a passion that never seemed to fade. Zelda became pregnant again when Daniel was 18 months old, and this time neither of them was surprised. Their second son together was born in the spring, an easier labor than Daniel's had been. They named him James, and he had Samuel's light hair and Zelda's dark eyes. Now they were truly a large family, 7 people in a house that had started as a lonely cowboy's shelter. The neighbors stopped gossiping about the widow who had married so quickly. Instead, the Pierce family became known for their kindness and hard work. Zelda's sewing business grew, and she started teaching Emma and some of the other girls in the area. Samuel's ranch became one of the most successful in the region, built on careful management and long hours. But the real success was measured in smaller moments. Thomas riding out with Samuel to check the herd, the two of them talking about everything and nothing. Emma teaching Sarah to raid, her patience endless. William making baby James laugh with silly faces. Daniel taking his first steps. Zelda humming while she cooked dinner, pausing to kiss Samuel as he came in from the cold. Years passed in a blur of seasons and growing children. Emma fell in love with the young man Samuel had hired years ago, and they married when she turned 18. Thomas bought land adjacent to Samuel's and started his own small ranch. William surprised everyone by deciding he wanted to be a teacher, moving to Billings to attend the normal school there. Sarah grew into a beautiful young woman who loved the ranch life as much as her mother and siblings. Daniel became Samuel's shadow, learning everything about cattle and horses and the land. James showed an early talent for woodworking, making furniture that Zelda sold along with her sewing. Samuel and Zelda grew older together, their love deepening with each passing year. On their 10th anniversary, Samuel took her back to the spot where he had first seen the wagon in the blizzard. "You remember that night?" he asked. "I remember thinking I was going to watch my children freeze to death," Zelda said. "And then I remember a man appearing out of the snow like an angel, telling me it would be all right. I was no angel. You were to me. You still are." They stood together in the spring sunshine, so different from that terrible winter night. The land around them was green and full of life, including the cattle that bore the Pierce brand. Their children and grandchildren would inherit all of this, a legacy built on love and hard work. "Thank you," Samuel said. "For what? For letting me save you, for saving me in return, for building this life with me. Thank you for having enough heart to make room for all 5 of us when you could have just ridden past that wagon. I could never have ridden past, not once I saw you." They kissed there in the sunshine, still in love after all the years, still grateful for the blizzard that had brought them together. Samuel Pierce died peacefully in his sleep at the age of 67, surrounded by his wife, children, and grandchildren. Zelda held his hand as he passed, whispering that she loved him and would see him again someday. She followed him 5 years later, content in the knowledge that they had built something good and lasting. The ranch passed to Thomas and Daniel, who ran it together in honor of their father. Emma's children came to visit every summer. William brought his students out to the ranch for educational trips. Sarah married a neighboring rancher and stayed close by. James opened a furniture shop in Clifton Hill that became famous across Montana. The little house that Samuel had built for himself, the one that could barely hold one person, had been expanded and improved over the years into a proper family home. It stood for another 60 years, sheltering 3 generations of Pierce children before finally being torn down and replaced with something modern. But the story of how it all began, how a blizzard brought a widow and 4 children to a lonely cowboy's door, and how that cowboy made room for all 5, that story was passed down through the generations. It became a family legend, a reminder that sometimes the storms that seem most terrible can bring the greatest blessings. And every winter, when the snow fell hard and the wind howled, the Pierce descendants would remember Samuel and Zelda, and they would be grateful for the day a kind man refused to let a desperate family freeze, and in saving them, saved himself. The love story that began in desperation and cold had become something warm and lasting, a testament to the truth that family is not always about blood, but about the people who show up in the storm and choose to stay. Samuel Pierce had opened his door on that terrible night expecting nothing and gained everything. Zelda Miller had knocked on that door expecting rejection and found home. Their love had been tested by hardship, strengthened by time, and ultimately proved eternal by the legacy they left behind. In a harsh land that showed no mercy, they had created mercy for each other. In a time that offered few second chances, they had given each other a new beginning. And in the end, that was the greatest success of all.